All right, I'm going to do an example here. When I first started buying fertilizer for food plots, I would go to my local feed supply store and I would um, ask them to take a look at my soil test, and then we would sit down and write out the formula for what we needed and what he had on hand in bags. So that could get a little complicated, and when you're like me and you went to a government school, you don't have any math skills. So a lot of times my brain would just shut down and I would just let him do it. But here's just one example, and I try to get a real simple example so that it doesn't get confusing. If you're good with math and ratios, this is going to seem really easy for you. But for guys like me, it's not that easy. So let me just go over this example real quick. So I sent in a soil sample and I got my test back. I wanted the requirements for a wildlife food plot. Now, when they test for a wildlife food plot, they just figure you're going to put in mostly clovers and maybe a little bit of grass component. So when I got the results back, I can see that I need 4,000 pounds of lime because my pH is 4.4. Pretty low pH. Okay, pretty bad. Now, this is in the Poconos and it's up in the woods, and I've never seen it that low, so that's a bad one. So it required 4,000 pounds, which I actually am surprised it was that low. So we need, that can't be right. There's no fucking way that's right. A 4.4 pH. All right. Okay, let's go through an example. When I first started doing fertilizers, I would just go to my local feed store, take my soil test. I can carry my soil test down in there, and I would sit down with the owner of the feed store and we would write out the different formulations that he had. And he did this every day, so he could easily put together the different ratios, how many bags you need, and to meet the requirements that was on my soil test without wasting money. So if you do it every day, it's really easy. What confuses people is that everything is in ratios of percentage on the bag. These are percentages. So it's based on 100 pounds, but the bag comes in 50-pound bags, okay? So everything has to be doubled, right? So now, let's say, for instance, in this case, I put a test in for a wildlife food plot, and we're going to grow clover in this food plot. My lime requirement is 4,000 pounds, and my magnesium is 80. So it's requiring magnesium, so therefore I want to use a high mag lime, okay? So you want dolomitic limestone when you apply your limestone. So you need to tell the guy who's doing it that's what you want, or purchase it that way if you're spreading it yourself. We need 10 pounds of phosphate on that food plot per acre. We need 90 pounds of potash, which is usually the case in a clover food plot, usually requires potash, okay? Now, let's say we have a 1 acre food plot, to make it simple, and we go down to the tractor supply or wherever, and you find that they have some bags of 0060 down there, okay, which is a sack of potassium chloride probably, and you can use that to de-ice your sidewalk if you want to. And they have bags of 1515. So you're like, well, I don't want to buy all 1515 because you're going to waste your money on stuff you don't need over here. So I can see that we can get close with 2 bags of that potassium chloride. That'll bring us up to 60 pounds in our 1 acre, because they're 50-pound bags, and the analysis is based on 100. So we need 2 bags to get to 60 pounds. So that gets us pretty close to our 90 pounds. Now I can take 2 bags of triple 15 and I can get my 90 pounds of potassium. Okay. Now we're right on the money with our potassium, and they wanted us to get a little bit of phosphate in there. So now you have 15 pounds of phosphate and 15 pounds of N, which is a good idea anyway, because we often want to use a starter fertilizer. It has a little bit of nitrogen in it just to get the seeds to start growing. Now the problem with legumes, I don't want to get off into a big lecture, but with legumes you don't want to put a lot of N down, because you make the legume lazy and it won't nodulate. Okay, so to start with, you might want to put a little nitrogen down, but you don't want to fertilize it. You never want to fertilize a clover field with any nitrogen later on. So that's how you would do this particular situation. Okay. Now, let me think up another example and share that with you. Okay, here's another real life example. This is going to be a rye food plot. Okay. Now, when I put rye on my soil test as my crop, when I turned it in, I said I wanted to plant rye. Okay. The pH came back 6.4, so we don't have to worry about lime. Well, hang on. Shit. All right, here's another example where I wanted to plant some rye on an acre in the fall. And my soil test came back 6.4 pH, so we don't have to put any lime on. My numbers came back 25 parts per million phosphorus, 94 potassium, there's plenty of magnesium here. So the requirements for my crop are over here. They're requiring me to put down 90 pounds of nitrogen, 100 pounds of phosphate, and 160 pounds of potash. Okay? Now to get there, you know, we like to go to our highest requirement first and try to build up our sacks of fertilizer to meet that largest requirement. Okay? We need a lot of potash here, so let's go back again at our feed store supply, and we have plenty of this potassium chloride, so we're gonna get some of that. All right. So if we get 2 50-pound sacks of that for an acre, that gives us our 60 pounds of, you know, because it's 100 pounds again of material, we have 60 pounds of actual potassium in there. The next thing we might want to do, if they have some triple 20 on hand, we'll get 10 bags of triple 20. Since we need 100 pounds of phosphate, that'll bring us up perfect on our phosphate levels, and that'll bring us up to also 100 more pounds of potassium. So now we take our 100 pounds, our 60 pounds, and we're perfect on our potash, and we're damn close on our nitrogen and phosphate. Okay? So there you go. You can buy 12 bags of fertilizer that way. Now, if you were to go out and buy enough triple 20 to get 160 pounds, then you'd be looking at buying a lot of fertilizer. What would that be? Like 80 bags of fertilizer. You don't want to do that. You want to buy 12 bags of fertilizer and get just what you need. So there you have it. You can play around with these numbers, look at your soil test requirements, and then start with your highest need first, and then see what you have on hand and work your numbers and build it up from there. Now, to avoid all of that, you take your soil test down. If you're lucky enough to be in a county that has plenty of agriculture, there's probably a Growmark or a Southern States or some kind of a feed supply dealer that will formulate that for you. Growmark has all the different components of fertilizer loose out in their storage area, and they'll formulate that. You tell them how many acres you want to do and what your needs are, and they'll custom mix that for you. Okay. Now, they may not want to bag it, so you just got to bring it on a trailer and then you shovel it into your cyclone spreader. But naturally, more people have access to bags of fertilizer because you can just go down to your Tractor Supply or even Walmart probably in certain times a year and buy fertilizer that way and put it together yourself. All right, so that's a brief explanation of putting together your fertilizer formulations. And let's talk about next, I think we'll talk about lime, how it works, why you need it, and how not to go about liming your food plots.